I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Look, you're a respected royal biographer, and there are so many people who are on the sort of royal gravy train, if you will, people who are making a career out of gossip and speculation. But yours very much built on confidence and sources and fact. And you don't offer an opinion that often inside your book. But when you do, I suppose, therefore, it carries a bit more weight. So when you say that the Sussexes are easily offended and, you know, effectively pretty prickly, what do you mean and what have you based that on?
Well, on numerous their riposte to any given situation in their books, in their TV interviews. And let's not forget, there have been a lot of TV interviews, 6-part Netflix drama, Spare. You see time and again that they feel that they feel resentful. They feel that, you know, something hasn't gone their way and that this is part of some sort of calculated campaign against them. And actually, I mean, when you've got a fast-moving story, I mean, for example, in my book, I go into those frantic hours after the death of the Queen, and everybody's trying to sort themselves out. And Harry writes in his book Spare how you know, no one will return his calls and he can't get through to anyone, and it's sort of it's just all a bit me. And actually, the whole kind of royal machine, if you like, is a team effort. And I just think it's very sad because, you know, Harry and Meghan, they had such potential. And now when we do tend to hear from them, it's on a royal matter, it's just to say how miserable they were being royal. And that was, you know, they were royal for whatever it was, 600-700 days. They're post-royal now for over twice that time.
Can you envisage a scenario where they're back in England and they're back in royal life?
I can't envisage a situation where they're back, as it were, as part of the sort of royal working unit, but I could certainly see it becoming a kind of normal thing for them to keep.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World, and tonight on the show we've got Lieutenant General Sir Simon Mayoral. We've also got political commentator Matthew Stadler. He's going head-to-head with Peter Whittle. Also got author Inya Dieki, and we've got a legend of TV on tonight, that is John Lyons. But first, let's go to the news.
Thanks, Lee. I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. Our top stories. Police have confirmed 3 children whose bodies were found at a home in Bristol died from knife injuries. 7-year-old Faris Bash, 3-year-old Jury and 9-month-old Mohammed were found in the Sea Mills area on Sunday. The 42-year-old woman, arrested on suspicion of their murder, remains in hospital and is being treated for non-life-threatening injuries. A vigil is due to be held in memory of the children. Former Post Office Chief Executive Paula Venables has been stripped of her CBE by the King following the Horizon IT scandal. She was heavily criticised for routinely denying any problems with the system, which led to the wrongful prosecution of hundreds of sub-postmasters. She received the honour in 2018 and announced that she planned to hand it back with immediate effect last month. She'll now formally lose the title for bringing the honours system into disrepute. An unexploded Second World War bomb found in Plymouth has now been successfully taken out to sea. The 500-kilogram unexploded device was found in a garden in Keyham and was successfully lifted onto a military vehicle. 10,000 residents are now being allowed to return to their homes following its removal. Local MP Johnny Mercer thanking emergency responders who worked around the clock. Former Tory MP Bob Stewart has had his racially aggravated public order conviction quashed on appeal at Southwark Crown Court. Mr Stewart was convicted last November after he was accused of telling activist Saeed Ahmed Al-Wadai to go back to Bahrain. That was during a row outside the Foreign Office. Mr Justice Benathan said that while the words spoken by Mr Stewart amounted to abuse, he did not believe that it caused Mr Al-Wadai harassment, alarm or distress. An asylum seeker has been sentenced to 9 years and 6 months for the manslaughter of 4 migrants who drowned trying to cross the Channel. In a retrial at Canterbury Crown Court, Ibrahima Bar was found guilty of piloting an unseaworthy inflatable between France and the UK in December of 2022. He claimed that smugglers threatened to kill him if he refused to drive the boat, but the prosecution said he owed the passengers a duty of care. Well, for the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code that's on your screen right now, or why not go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now let's get straight back to Lee Anderson's Real World.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World, and tonight I'm joined by Sir Simon Mayhill, Lieutenant General, is that right?
Correct.
And also Bag has left in the corner. He's smiling away there. We've got Matthew Sadler. He's the voice of socialism.
The voice of reason, I think they say.
The voice of reason.
Common sense.
Serious point, Sir Simon. 2 years tomorrow, we saw the outbreak of the war in Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's a war, we keep saying, where Russia take ground, then the Ukrainians fight back with the backing, the generous backing of the West. We know that Russia's being backed by other countries, such as Iran and China.
Korea, China.
Is it a war that Ukraine can win?
It's a very difficult war for them to win on their own, Lee. We should all be extremely grateful that the initial aid we gave to Ukraine 2 years ago stopped Putin's attempt to decapitate the Ukrainian regime and defeat the Ukrainian army. We'd be left with a very difficult and different situation. Because the Ukrainians have held on remarkably well. We could be in such a different place. But their resources are finite. They absolutely depend on Western support or Allied support to stay in the field.
Yeah.
And if they don't get it, the Russians have every chance of being...
Why is it, Simon? Why is it, Simon, that it's so important to help Ukraine? Because it is a very strategic country for us in the West.
It's a very strategic country. I think people don't quite realise how important it is for gas, for minerals, for grain. And you'll remember the stoppage of grain by Roscoe, let alone the fact that it's standing up to blatant aggression by Russia, which, as we know, having seen Navalny being killed the other day, is under the leadership of an absolute psychotic, paranoid, delusional leader. And if Ukraine collapses, then where are the Baltic states? Where is Poland? Where's the NATO alliance, particularly when we know some of the issues that have been debated in America at the moment and Trump's latest... So it's really important the Ukrainians prevail in this, and they need Western support. We're not exactly putting our own troops on the line. So the Ukrainians are paying the blood, we're paying the treasure.
So that's a fair point, Matthew, that we're not putting troops on the front line, but we're coughing up financially with arms, we're supporting Ukraine. You're on the left of politics. Are we doing the right thing?
I think we're doing the right thing. And it's important, though, to check ourselves and to keep having this conversation 2 years on, because you think of how many Ukrainians have died. I mean, obviously, that is a Ukrainian decision. But I think just by last summer, 70,000 or something, 70,000 Ukrainian troops had been killed. That is a gobsmacking number. If you think of the families affected by that and the friends, so many people now in Ukraine will know that. I think officially, actually, it's a state secret how many Ukrainians have lost their lives. So they certainly are paying the blood price. But we have to remember how also we felt when Putin invaded Ukraine for the second time 2 years ago. We were outraged that this sovereign country on European soil was being breached. I think to some extent we have to hold on to that, because if you give in to bullies, we know there can be very, very dire consequences. One concern I have, though, is that they did a poll very recently of about 12 EU countries, and barely 10% of Europeans, according to that poll, think that Ukraine will actually win this war. So what does that mean? What is an acceptable negotiated settlement if that has to be the case?
And actually, it's worth taking up Matthew's point there about casualty levels. 70,000 is every man and woman in the British Army dead, let alone the wounded that Matthew's referred to. So they are doing our fight, but it is very interesting. There is not a solidarity within NATO to keep them in the fight.
I think we can learn lessons also, Simon, from history as well. We look back to Churchill's time in the early 1940s, 30s, when it seemed that the whole of Parliament was against him. They weren't listening to him, and he foresaw what was coming. And in the end, he proved to be right, which might have been unpopular with Parliament. It might have been unpopular with the public at that stage. But sometimes you have got to make a stand. And if we give in to Putin, if we don't support Ukraine, then who's next?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, what price the NATO alliance? What price solidarity? What price other allies around the world? You know, in the Far East, in the Middle East, who will look that the West doesn't have the capacity to sustain. But you've got to pay your insurance premiums. You know, with the crisis.
We talked about the numbers in our armed forces these days. We see it's decreased, and there will be arguments that we've got more technology, etc., so we can fight wars and battles differently. I understand that. Let's talk about wokery in the armed forces. We see the bits of wokery creeping in the Air Force and in the Army. That bothers me because, you know, I've got a lot of friends who have served in the forces. My dad himself, he served in the forces, and there were times of tough discipline. I know when National Service was in the 50s, they were, you know, they had a proper initiation, should I say, to get in the armed forces, and they were sometimes treated harshly, but there was a reason for that.
Yeah. Well, my father was Air Force. He commanded RAF Northolt up the road here. The key, like every bit of public service at the moment, is you've got to keep reminding yourself what the purpose of an organisation is. We are here to fight His Majesty's enemies and prevail, not to fight and lose. And the key is that everybody who comes in, of course, you know, things have moved on, society's moved on, but the core requirement for the armed forces is to fight on behalf of the nation, alongside allies. And people must remember, it's not, you know, this is not an organisation where it can be about me. It's about the person next door to me and the person next door to him or her. Hence, in a God, Queen, God, King country, your platoon, your troop, your squadron, your regiment, the army. And the great thing is, you know, we invest a lot in the individual, quite rightly, to build the team, which requires people to, you know, subordinate some of their requirements in order that we complete the task. And that task is absolutely, you know, vital. And we do need our politicians to understand, you know, what we're going to ask our young men and women to do.
Matthew, do you think us politicians do understand what our... I know there's quite a few ex-forces in Parliament, many of my colleagues have served in the armed forces, but do you think that, on a whole, we truly understand what our armed forces are all about and what they have to do in the heat of the moment sometimes?
I think there's a huge divide in our society between people such as myself who have never served and haven't considered serving, and those who are brave enough to do so. Actually, I interviewed Sir Malcolm Rifkin not long ago, and he was one of the first, maybe even the first, Defence Secretary who hadn't himself been in the military. And he felt actually that the Army were relieved about this because they didn't want someone who'd been relatively junior bossing them around, so there could be a danger. Grant Shapps, of course, has not been in the military. On the question of wokery, my worry is that we don't want to drag our armed forces into yet another culture war. What really matters is, are we recruiting enough? Probably not. Is our Trident missile working? Well, this week we found out, terrifyingly, no, it doesn't seem to be because it malfunctioned. Are our aircraft carriers working? Well, eventually one did set sail for these NATO drills, but both of them failed to get off at first time of asking. These are massive concerns. When we hear this week that Russian planes have been flying close to British airspace, these are worrying times. We shouldn't underestimate the threat of Russia. We need robust armed forces. We don't want to drag them, if we don't need to, into culture wars.
Perhaps we need Jeremy Corbyn back. He'd sort this out, wouldn't he?
Please, don't go there.
But Matthew, you know, he talks about we're ill-equipped, we're ill-prepared, etc. But Has it always been that way with the British Army?
There is an element of it. It's inevitable. In times of peace, governments very justifiably will invest in other parts that prioritise healthcare, benefits, all the things that make life, inverted commas, worth living. But the reality is there is a duty of leadership to remind people that this is not a given, which is what Churchill was saying, that you cannot guarantee that this will not be taken away from you. You and I can recall, if we're looking back at the anniversary, 2 days or 24 hours before the Russians came into Ukraine, people were going to cafes, restaurants, love affairs, opera, you name it. And suddenly, overnight, it's gone. And unless you're just prepared to have honesty with your public about you need to invest, and we've been taking a peace dividend for far too long, frankly, since the high days of the fall of the Berlin.
No, there was a time, Matthew, when young men wanted to sign up to fight for Queen and Country, back in King and Country, back in the day. It doesn't seem to be that way these days. Is it time to bring back national service?
I'm not sure it's time to bring back national service, but I was out to dinner with my wife last night, and we were both very concerned about whether there is an appetite in our society to sign up. We need to make sure that, should the worst happen, we have a degree of preparedness to do our duty for our country. I mean, I'm 44 now, so I might be a bit old, but I hope, and I use the word hope because you only really know when you're tested, but I hope I would sign up if needed, and we want that to be the case right around Britain. And you make a very, very good point, actually, that those Ukrainians, they didn't necessarily see this coming. I mean, if you look at Instagram at the time, people were doing their gym sessions and all the rest of it, and from one moment to the next, suddenly you've got one of the most powerful armies in the world trying to invade your capital city. And that should be a reminder to all of us.
Yeah, I'm going to visit my regiment in Poland next week, and one will make the point, that we should be proud to be in the army precisely because it is a difficult job that demands extraordinary amount of subordination of the self. We're back to, is it all about me? No, it's not bloody well about me. It's about the regiment, it's about the other soldiers, and it's about the nation we defend. And actually, the wokery is really bad for people within the army. Of course, we respect individuals, quite rightly. We're much more diverse, much more inclusive. But at the end of it, that is only as good as what it contributes to fighting power. And I think our nation expect, we are a great martial nation. We're a militaristic nation.
But when you look through the pool of, no disrespect to the army, Sam, but when you look through the pool of people they normally draw from, I've seen it in my own community, it's normally young lads. A lot of the time come from impoverished backgrounds. They want to get away from home. They've not had a good home life. And they're looking for a family to join. They're looking for friends. They're looking for family. They're not interested in this wokery nonsense. They don't want to drive a tank over the hill and fire glitter bombs at the enemy and play loud music and stuff like that. They want to get stuck in, don't they?
You're absolutely right. And you've got to look at the demographic. Of course, we want to reach out. It's a national organisation. There's a huge part for all communities to contribute to the nation's defence. But actually, many of them are precisely the people you talk about. We need to get them in numbers, give them an exciting job. You're quite right. And they want to come in for the excitement of being in the army. They like the pride. It's the family. Oh, and by the way, we'll turn out, most of them, we do have others who are homeless and prisoners, I get that. But most will turn out far better citizens. So it's an investment in the nation.
Last word to Matthew, is it an investment in people?
I mean, no, I don't have anything intrinsically against, say, for every school leaver to do a month, immediately after they finish school, do a month of some sort of military training. It would invest in citizenship apart from anything else. And the idea of the collective, the idea of a national identity, which can sometimes be a bit wobbly. I mean, we're sitting in one of the pubs that are devoted to England rugby. We get around the flag at sport, but maybe that is a good idea. I'll just remind you one final thing. My grandfather won the Military Cross, right? He was a public school boy. He started out as a private peeling potatoes in the Second World War. He became one of Montgomery's aides de camp, and he won the Military Cross, one of the biggest medals for bravery, because he went up to the German lines on his motorbike and showed huge bravery, right? That is just a couple of generations away. Since we as a country face an existential threat, we have to take this seriously.
Great word.
Good to hear from Matthew.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, a fascinating discussion once again. Great guests. Do not go away, because coming up after the break, we've got John Lyons. I think he was in Touch of Frost. He's a good man.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Ken, do you find the Union flag, the Union Jack, divisive?
In some situation, but as Simon quite clearly stated, and I agree with everything that he says in regards that there's situation when people use it for ulterior motive to cause fear, alarm and distress. We saw that with the far right when they came up to saying protecting the Churchill statues and things of that nature. But largely on the large whole, even I wave the St. George's flag on a sporting occasion. And I don't see anything wrong in raising the Union Jack or the St. George's flag so long as the intention is correct. And as he says, Mr. Brockhurst, he served for the country and he should have every right to be proud of what he's done and the way that he wants to display it.
All right, Simon, what do you make of this kind of, I would argue it as like student social media-based politics, where you get these pillocks from the Green Party or whatever saying, oh, it's divisive and I can't believe it. It will be legal in this country to do... Do those people need to get out more? I was on the streets of Stratford earlier on, an incredibly diverse place, speaking to a massive range of people right across different age demographics. I couldn't find a single sausage who said to me that they thought that this guy from the Green Party was right.
He obviously has absolutely no attention from anybody. And this is his way of finding attention. Both Ken and myself, we both agree that nobody should use any symbol of national identity to offend others deliberately, because that's just inflaming a situation. There's so much sensitivity around so many things today, and people do get offended by so much so quickly without any rhyme or reason.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Welcome back to Lee Anderson's Real World. We're going back in the day now with TV star John Lyons. I said that right.
John Lyons, yes.
You've been in The Touch of Frost, George and Mildred, been in Pantomime, Baron Hardup, loads of different... Said that right, didn't I?
You did indeed.
Look, we spoke off camera earlier, I think 1964. You'd have been living in London at the height of the swinging 60s, the Beatles, the Stones, all that sort of stuff. But what made you want to become an actor at that time of day?
I never did want to become an actor. I had never thought about it in my life.
Okay.
I was born in Whitechapel in the East End of London, so yeah, I'm a true Cockney.
Yeah.
Born.
Don't sound like one.
No. Well, I did 3 years of drama school, and I did elocution lessons every day. So yes, but I was born when I first went to drama school. I had such a strong Cockney accent that I had to do something with it, which I did. But I went to drama school in '61 just by accident. I used to play football on a Sunday morning at a place called Hackney Marshes, which is on Sunday morning, thousands of boys and girls, well, not girls, girls now would, boys and men would have played there. And in our little pub side, there was a journalist. He just joined us by the name of Tom Duncan. And one Thursday night, after about 2 weeks, he suddenly turned to me, and I have no idea why he said it, as you and I are sitting here now, and he said, "Tell me, John, have you ever thought about becoming an actor?" I thought, what? Never. Well, he took out of his business card, and he gave me a business card, and he said, "There's a new drama school opening in about 3 months' time. I think you should try that." I don't know why. I don't know what he saw in me. I have no idea.
When did you get your first big break?
Well, I know this sounds a bit pompous maybe, but I left drama school on sat it on a Friday night, and I started filming for the BBC on the Monday.
Really?
Yeah.
What was that?
In a series called Catch Hand. Now, remember, this is 1964. Catch Hand with an actor called Anthony Booth, who was the father of Cherie
Blair. Yeah, Cherie Blair, yeah.
So that was that. I finished with that after 2 weeks and then went straight into rehearsals of a musical called Oh, What a Lovely War, which they made a film of eventually. Richard Attenborough made a film, but it started on stage, and I was in that for the next 2 years. Wow,
so you worked straight away?
Yes, almost immediately. I was so lucky. So lucky.
So you would have been mingling and associating with some big stars in the 60s.
Well,
any specific memories?
Well, right, in that Oh, What a Lovely War from the beginning, I shared digs for many, many months with Nigel Hawthorne.
Yeah.
Sir Nigel Hawthorne.
Yeah.
And in fact, Nigel came to our wedding in 1965. So yes, they were from the beginning.
Yeah.
And then when I left that, I was lucky enough to get in one of the BBC's very first soaps, which nobody remembers, called United.
Okay.
And that was in 66.
What was that about?
Football. Are you surprised?
I sort of got that. So you must have had, when you first became an actor, you must have had, looking at actors, and some great actors of the day. I'm thinking about people like Richard Burton and some of them big American stars, your Kirk Douglas, your Tony Curtis's, and people like that. You must have had an hero who you wanted to emulate.
Well, yes, there was. Right at the beginning, it would have been not just for me, but for many boys of my age, James Dean.
Wow.
Yes, it would have been James Dean.
Yeah.
But as the years gone on, and I looked at other actors, certainly on the screen and in the theatre, Spencer Tracy.
Spencer Tracy, yeah.
Spencer Tracy was a wonderful, wonderful film actor.
Yeah.
And he's only been eclipsed now probably by Anthony Hopkins.
Wow. So I think if I'd have been an actor, which I would have been a very poor actor. I think my hero was watching the black and white films growing up in the 70s and 80s was Errol Flynn.
Yes.
I thought he was every man would want to be like Errol Flynn.
Yes, indeed.
He was fit, he could box, he was a very athletic, and I think he was a bit of a ladies' man as well.
I think he was a bit of that's an understatement.
And I've just watched a Netflix, I think it was a Netflix series on Cary Grant.
Yes.
Superb.
Yes.
A bit like yourself. He had a bit of an accent when he went to America, like a West Country accent. They couldn't understand.
He comes from Bristol.
Yeah. Then he taught himself to speak correctly like you and went on to have a great career.
But he had the look.
Yeah.
He had that wonderful look. Archie Leach.
Yeah, Archie Leach, Archibald Leach, yeah. So,
do you know Errol Flynn started in this country as well?
Yeah, I think he was from Australia?
He was from Australia, and he came over here. He wanted to be an actor, and he started, would you believe, in Northampton.
Yeah.
In a repertory company. And he would have done Panto, Robin Hood, in Northampton.
Yeah, so...
And he was such a good-looking man that eventually they saw him and they sent photographs over to Hollywood.
Yeah.
And they called for him, and that was it.
Yeah, I mean, he's quite timeless, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's got that face that could get away with it now.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So female actresses, who's your hero?
Well, probably would go back to Katharine Hepburn.
Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Was that African Queen?
Yes, it was, with Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah.
But now it would probably be Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
Well, there's lots of good actresses now. They really are.
But you look at young people now trying to break into it. I think you see people on reality TV shows, etc. The internet's readily available, YouTube. They make their own channels or programs.
Yeah.
Starting out today.
Oh, my word, I'm so glad I'm not starting out today. Yeah. When I left drama school in 1964, yes, there was a lot of work about.
Yeah.
Not only on TV, but in the theatre.
Yeah.
There were repertory companies where actors could go for 9 months, 6 months.
Like an apprenticeship.
And learn their craft. Yeah. That doesn't exist any longer. On TV, there was so much going on. We used to knock out, with all those comedies you mentioned, I probably did about one a month of those situation comedies on the buses.
I did
5 of those.
Yeah.
George and Mildred, yes, I did 4 of those.
Yeah.
Mind Your Language, can you remember that?
I can remember that, yeah.
Now, here's one you'll never...
weren't it?
Yeah, here's one you'll never see again.
Yeah.
Love Thy Neighbour.
Yeah.
Oh, I did want to. So I used to knock those out all the time.
Growing up in the 70s, I keep harping on about this. My favourite comedies were Dad's Army.
Yes.
And probably Rising Damp. I love Leonard Rossiter.
Great timing.
And Porridge. Great. And was you ever in any of those?
No, I wasn't. I wish I had been, but no, I wasn't.
Yeah.
Certainly David Jason was in Porridge.
He was, yeah, he was. But those comedies, John, going back to the 70s, those sort of comedies, they wouldn't get away with that now, would they? Because it would be considered offensive.
Yeah.
But they're of their time. And, I mean, I've had a few comedians on this show. Some people think I'm a comedian, but I'm not. And they always say to me that offence is taken, not given in comedy.
Yeah.
And I think that's a smart way of putting it. So
it is.
Anything you say can offend anybody, really, can't it?
Somewhere along the line, yeah. Well, certainly now, yes, whatever you say. But no, there would have been things, certainly, as I just mentioned there, love thy neighbour.
Yeah.
You'll never get away with that now. The other one with
Alf Garnett.
Alf Garnett.
Yeah, Alf Garnett.
Just about to...
And he actually hated that role.
He did.
I read somewhere.
He did. I worked a lot for Johnny Spate, who wrote it.
Yeah. But they were clever writers. Because the butt of the joke was the racist.
Good boy.
Who was saying outrageous things, racist things.
Yes.
But they were the stupid people.
Yeah. And people didn't really know that.
But it's very clever writing.
Yeah, and that's why Johnny was doing it.
Yeah, and it was the same with Rigsby. He was a misogynist, he was a sexist, he was a racist, he was a coward. There's all these characters rolled into one.
With great timing.
Yeah, with great comic timing. And nobody was laughing at him because everything he was saying and doing was ridiculous. But today they say, well, you can't put that on. Yeah. No, we need to see people like these characters, to criticise and laugh at and poke fun at, I think.
They still get repeats in the afternoon. I don't know whether you know, but actors do get residuals.
But I've got the box set for Rising Damp. So.
Have you?
Yeah.
So we do get residuals, and I got one the other month. And if you go back to things like George and Mildred. Now, George and Mildred was a very British comedy. The sex-starved wife and the henpecked husband.
Yeah.
It was one of those
it's good, yeah.
postcards at the seaside. Very British. I got a repeat the other week from Mozambique.
Yeah.
What do they make of George and Mildred in Mozambique? But they do.
Yeah.
So they do sell these all over the world, and we still show them again in the afternoons in this country. So they still go.
Is that like your pension fund?
It's part of my pension.
Okay,
yes.
okay.
I'm at the age now, yes, when I get a pension. Okay. But all these little... When I say we get residuals, it's not much.
Okay.
Little bits and pieces.
Okay. Any regrets in your career?
No, I don't really. I've been not only very, very lucky, I sometimes think to myself, I wish I'd have been a bit harder, a bit more ambitious.
Or been James Bond.
I wish I'd have been more ambitious in my career.
Okay.
I'd have probably not got more work, but maybe better work. I could be wrong.
John, fascinating discussion.
My pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
I'll be seeing my mother at the weekend, who's probably a big fan. She watches the Touch of Frost.
Good.
Always got it on. But look, do not go away, because coming up next, we've got Right versus Left. You don't want to miss that one.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
You have a president in President Biden who's not enforcing the law that was passed by Congress. President Obama, criticize him or not, actually enforced the law and was deporting people that had crossed illegally. Of course, President Trump enforced the law and improved the law to make sure that and worked with Mexico to have the Remain in Mexico policy. Biden has abandoned federal policy. In fact, he's deliberately trying to let in as many immigrants as possible. More for the Democrats, more is better and less is racist.
Just astonishing. And the statement that
Greg Abbott put out is really feisty stuff. He said the federal government has broken the contract between the United States and the state of Texas. And the eye numbers, Greg, are simply eye-watering. 6 million illegal immigrants have crossed our southern border in just 3 years, Governor Abbott says. That's more than the population of 33 states in the United States. Astonishing numbers.
And Martin, that's just Texas. If you add Arizona and other border states, you know, it's pushing 10 million. By the end of Biden's term, it'll be 11 million. A study by Yale University a few weeks ago, 3 very liberal professors that did the study estimate there's 22 million illegal aliens. So this is a crisis that was created by Biden. It's what he wants. They want unfettered access to the border. They're letting them in. It's a real hardship on the working people of Texas and other border states. And now it's a real hardship on cities that the federal government, as well as the governors of Texas and other states, are sending some of the migrants to those so-called sanctuary cities.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Lee Anderson's Real World. Now we've got Peter Whittle of the New Culture Forum. I think I got that right, yes. Peter. And Matthew Stadler, he's a political commentator on the left of politics, but I think he's a bit of a secret Tory. He's been telling me earlier, he's still got a membership card in the Labour Party, but we're going to swap that, aren't we?
Look, no way. If my wife can't get me to be a Tory, there's no way you are going.
We'll see about that. Look, this show is recorded, obviously, so things might change from when this actually goes out on Friday evening. But this week we've seen some, I think, disturbing scenes in Parliament where, you know, these are akin for me to see something in South America, in the Parliament in South America, where votes have been nodded through and rules have sort of been changed, and it's created outrage on my side of the House and with the SNPs. I think democracy was denied on Wednesday. This was supposed to be the SNP's day. It was their opposition day debate. It was their chance to have their say, have a proper government, and ultimately have their vote to show their constituents that they're on the side of the people in Gaza. That's up to them. But, Matthew,
well, I think what the Speaker was trying to do, and he may have failed in this, was to actually encourage democracy, to give everyone a chance to have their say, but it has obviously blown up spectacularly in his face. The scenes were not good. I mean, you know, you made the comment off camera, it was good TV, and in one sense it was good TV, but it was good TV for the wrong reasons.
It was shocking. Good TV, it was bad for democracy.
Not great for democracy, the outcome of it. I wonder whether you think, actually, though, that the Tories should have joined the SNP in sort of effectively storming out. Was that the grown-up? Was that the grown? Yeah, but was that the grown-up thing to do?
Well, it was a protest. It was a protest. We walked out of the chamber in protest, not necessarily in support of the SNPs, but in protest. We thought that democracy was failing at that moment in time in Parliament, so we had no choice, I don't think, but to walk out. But I'll come to you, Peter, because this Opposition Day debate, it is a debate. It's not law changing, it's not going to change anything really, but it's a chance for the opposition to have their say, have a vote, and let the constituents know what they've done. But for the first time in a long time, the Speaker actually accepted an amendment from the Labour Party, which is unprecedented, it doesn't happen, which we know from our sources that there was probably up to between 80 and 100 Labour MPs ready to rebel and support the SNP motion, which would have divided the Labour Party and created a big headache for Sir Keir Starmer.
Yes.
So do you think maybe pressure was put on the Speaker from Sir Keir?
It seemed so. As you say, we're recording it, you know, this is the moment, so more will emerge. I think what I take exception to really is the idea that this was good TV. It might be good TV for us. Yeah. For the majority of people looking in, it's terrible. They look at it and they think, you know, well, actually it confirms all there was feelings about Parliament. Now, what I would love to see, Lee, would be that level of passion, if you like, and activity over issues, for example, such as immigration, such as the gradual disintegration of our culture, such as the cost of living. Instead, what we got was this kind of politicking, plus, at the same time, extraordinary virtue signalling and people wanting to be seen to vote in a certain way. And here we come to the nub of the problem for me. All of this stuff is important. There's no question about it, what happened with the Speaker. But what worries me more than anything, and it was said, in fact, that this was done also for the safety of it. I'm not buying that. What worries me, what worries me is the growth of Islamist fundamentalism and sectarianism in our politics. This was possibly one of the worst examples of it yet. You know, what it really means is that fear of possible threat, and you might say, actually, the threats are authentic and indeed that they're real, but that has driven the way Parliament operates.
Is this a sign of things to come, Matthew? If Labour get into power, are they going to pander to the BAME mob in the gates of Parliament and use the safety card to push things through?
Well, we disagree about a lot, don't we? We are on very different sides of the political spectrum, despite your gag at the start. But on this, I think we probably are united. We cannot have our democratic body, Parliament, bowing in any way to the mob.
The Labour Party's doing it, Matthew, already. So what are they going to be like when they get in power?
Well, no better. I just think that Parliament has to be immune to the sorts of threatening pressures that no doubt exist, whether that is a mob of people or demonstrators outside the gates of Parliament, or whether that is the threat that people will demonstrate outside MPs' properties, both of which should have no impact on how the Speaker does parliamentary business, and it shouldn't have an impact on how Labour MPs, Conservative MPs, many few...
Let me come to Pete. Are they doing this for votes?
I think that basically, in the case of many Labour MPs, they will be looking at their large Muslim constituencies, certainly. But also, it's just the evidence of what's happened over the past, 2 months now? I mean, the level of intimidation, the fact that the police as well, for example, just simply seem to allow it to happen. Yeah. And last night, in fact, outside, there were these demonstrations. I don't think that last night's demonstrations probably had the effect. I think what it is a period of over 2 or 3 months, right? The police allowed, for example, there was a big kind of graphic that was put on Big Ben last night, sort of like, free Palestine or whatever it was. The problem here is that there is a growing sectarianism, as I said, that's showing itself in all sorts of different ways. And I think that I agree with Matthew when he says that Parliament should not, basically kowtow to this. But the fact is, they are, and they will.
But the BAME mob outside, again, and throughout the country, Matthew, they've seen this as a little bit of a victory. They've influenced decision-making within Parliament. And I'll go back to you again, Matthew. Is this a sign of things to come under a Labour government?
Well, I hope not. And if and when we get a Labour government, I, as a journalist and a believer in democracy and a believer in doing the right thing, will join you in holding that Labour government to account. That's an important function of our democracy, that journalists do precisely that. I hope it doesn't evolve in that way, is all I can say.
I think there's one problem that we have with Labour, this will open up a divide with us, which is, I think, what you want, is that they are going to be bringing in certain legislation which embeds in it a definition, for example, of Islamophobia, which will make virtually all criticism of Islam Islamophobic. So, for example, in this current situation, me talking about Islamic fundamentalism, Islamism, that will possibly be dangerous in the future. I mean, these are the real threats we are facing to our democracy.
Well, look, we need to be absolutely clear about this. There is a very, very important, and I would argue very obvious distinction between Muslims, British Muslims, vast majority of whom are law-abiding citizens, of course, right? And then Islamofascists, for whom none of us should have any time whatsoever. We mustn't get caught up in this attempt by some to drag the general British... Let me finish the point. To drag the general British Muslim population and brand them with this Islamic extremist,
but you cannot have a
which
situation.
Is dangerous.
You cannot have a situation, guys. You cannot have a situation where the threat to MP safety influences which way Parliament votes.
No, we've all agreed
Which
on
is
that.
what the Labour Party did yesterday.
Can I just answer your point there, Matthew? Yeah, sure. That is said after every incident like this. It's said after every terrorist attack. It's said after every kind of demonstration. Fact of the matter is that whenever the Muslim population generally, which I'm not saying that they're all Islamists, but the fact obviously
they are.
But the point is, the bigger it gets, the greater this threat becomes.
So, guys, we're going to have to go now to the yes or no, Chris. I know you're dying to do this. So last week was a shocker from Stephen Pound. I think he got 3 out of 5. He's been doing it for months, nearly a year. But it's terrible. So 5 questions, guys. It's a yes or no answer. Dead simple. So, Matthew, have the Labour Party given in to mob rule?
No.
Yes. Of course, yeah. Number 2, Peter, do you think the public have lost a little bit of confidence in Parliament?
What? Are you kidding?
That's a no. So you delivered like 3 or 4 different words then. It's a yes or no, so I can't give you that.
Yes.
He's going to win again, isn't he? Because he's hovering around the background, waiting for you to slip up.
Prevaricator.
Matthew, will England beat the Scots this weekend at rugby?
There was a match.
A wrong answer again. It's a shocker. Number 4, Peter, will Trump win the presidential election?
Yes.
No. Okay, number 5, this is a killer. This is. Peter, is a vote for reform at the next general election a vote for Labour?
No.
Yes. Right. Matthew's got 5. You've got a pathetic 3. Sorry to say about it, but we can build on that for next time.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's yes or no.
Why it's bad as Pound or Stephen Pound?
I don't think anybody's as bad as Stephen Pound. He's probably the worst we've had on the show. He's actually worse for Stephen because he's been on about a dozen times and he still gets it wrong.
Yes.
Should know better. Yeah. He needs to keep off of that, I think. We've got last orders next and we've got NS Diaca coming up, so please stay tuned for that one. Thanks, guys.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Are you across this microaggression story?
I'm across microaggressions. I'm also across XL bullies.
You would not last 5 minutes.
Oh, for God's
So
sake,
basic-
civil servants, give me strength.
So civil servants have been taught not to roll their eyes. Something you do very well. We both do it quite a lot, actually.
Because it's seen as an act of microaggression. This, by the way, this costs the taxpayer, this training, £160,000. What the hell is going on in our woke civil service? Who cares if someone rolls their eyes in exasperation?
What the hell is going on in our civil service, full stop, if the way that civil servants are communicating with each other is rolling their eyes and looking at their phones? I mean, is the government being run by people who are essentially acting to each other like stroppy teenagers?
Yeah.
But I'm all right with people, because, you see, I would be in defence of eye rolling.
So me too, I couldn't care less.
But do you know why? Because I want people to give me their genuine reaction, as long as it's not deeply offensive. But I want to know how people feel. And what they're being told here, civil servants are being taught, and of course this is an area of employment law, because people are taking cases against their bosses who roll their eyes at them. They're saying they're being encouraged to say nothing and nod their heads to promote transparency and inclusion. Don't show what you really think, just nod your head.
But I think that comes with then saying what you really think, and this is the key problem, and what these courses are trying to establish. And I looked into some of them when I was researching this, and it's not saying hide what you're feeling. It's saying, rather than huffing and puffing and rolling your eyes, if you've got a disagreement with someone, say I've got a disagreement with someone. Because otherwise, you can't have an effective workplace if people are sort of just passively, aggressively huffing at each other.
Why do these civil servants need to be taught this? Why do people need to be taught this? This is just normal discourse in a normal working day. You don't need a seminar on it.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Lee Anderson's Real World Round the Table discussion now with Ines Dieki. Thanks and welcome for coming on the show. Ines, you had a bit of a difficult journey to this country. You came from a country in North Africa. I think it's Libya. You came at the time of the Troubles. You are what we class as a genuine refugee, a genuine asylum seeker. You came over to this country, and this country, I believe, has given you wonderful opportunities and a great, like a second chance in life. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. I came in 2011, just when the war started to kick in. And usually my dad have issues, like he had a massive accident when he hit his head and he had a concussion. So we used to come for private treatment in the UK every 6 months. So during that time, we were having his treatment, and then the war was happening and it got worse. So we applied for asylum.
Was it difficult, that process, to get asylum?
It was really difficult. I mean, the long wait was really difficult, I think, because also what's happening in Libya and the way that I dealt with it, it was like, it felt like my world is just falling down, you know? But what was great about it is the help that he've got from this country and the treatments that he've got from this country and the support. It was massive, and I'm so grateful for it.
So I hear a lot, especially in Parliament, with some of my opposition colleagues who say that we're not always a welcoming country, we're not a tolerant country, we don't like having refugees here from... I disagree with that. I think we're an incredibly tolerant country.
Yeah.
We do welcome genuine refugees like yourself.
Yeah, my experience is totally not that. I definitely experienced that this country is so warm, so welcoming, so supportive, and so compassionate. You know, the way that they welcomed us, the way that we have got advice during our process for asylum, the way that my dad, like, they opened their arms for the treatment, for everything that he was dealing with. My experience is definitely amazing. I think I love this country and I love the people of this country.
And then you see the problems we have in the English Channel, where we see illegal migrants coming on a daily basis.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
To be honest with you, I don't feel great about it in a way that, like, I come from a war-torn country and I'm all about women and children. I've seen the people, the way that they suffer, elderly people, women and children. And I think when you see people from, like, economic migrants, when they use and abuse the system, and it impacts the people that's in need. And I don't support that. And I think it's a really unfair on the people that's really needing to be protected.
So why is it, Ines, that we see the people coming over on the boats, you've seen it on TV, on the news, they're 90%
male? Yeah.
Why is that?
I think there is this reputation about this country, even though we have it here, that this country is not welcome. And I think outside, they have the opposite reputation of this country is like a treasure that you can come and abuse the system and, like, you can live comfortably and it's easy to live here and not do too much. Now, I'm not saying that everyone's coming to that aim to just be lazy and claim us benefits, but, you know, it's easier to make it here if you do the minimum than, you know, in different other countries.
I always have this argument with people, sometimes in Parliament, sometimes wherever I am, that these young men are leaving a safe country, France. There's no war in France.
That's right.
I can never, ever pin anybody down to say why they're leaving France. Because if they were genuine, they'd stay in France.
That. I agree. And it does risk their life and a lot of life, and it also impacts a lot of people. They kind of encourage the business of human trafficking, which they lead to giving money to other people that's abusing people, you know, and they're gaining money out of risking their life. And sometimes we know a lot of boats, you know, a lot of people died during that process. So it's so, I don't believe in this at all. I think it's unfair.
It's a fascinating discussion Yes, that you love our country.
Yeah.
I think a hell of a lot. I'm sure our country loves you.
Yeah.
You made a great success.
Yeah.
I met your partner earlier. He seems like a great man. He's doing quite well as well, isn't he?
I know. He's here, by the way, with us. He's such a support. Like, I'm so grateful to meet him in this country as well. And he's in the Apprentice at the moment, smashing it. So, yeah, I'm so
excited. Out for the best.
Absolutely.
Lovely to meet you, Dan.
Thank you so much, Lee. Thank you.
Do not go away, because coming up next, we've got On the Pole. Last orders at the bar. I've got John. John Lyons here with me once again. It's a pleasure to have you back here.
My pleasure.
We chatted earlier. Very interesting conversation. But what we forgot to do was give this book a plug. Tell me about this book. COVID wasn't a wasted exercise for you, was it?
No, COVID. That's really the reason I wrote that book.
Yeah.
So COVID was, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
And I've been doing a lot of talks about my life, about my career, how I started and what have you. And when COVID came along, my agent said to me and my family, John, you really should write a book. I thought, I can't do that. I haven't got the dedication to sit down and write.
Just had a quick flick through here, and it mentions the Kray twins.
Yes, indeed.
What's that all about?
Well, it's a very, very long story.
Well, we've got about a minute.
Well, you've got about a minute. This lasts about 20 minutes.
Okay.
But I won't do 20 minutes. No, in fact, I was born in the street next to them.
Yeah.
They lived in Valence Road, 178 Valence Road. And when I was about 13, I was in Valence Road late at night, and I was getting beaten up by a gang. And luckily enough, I fell when I collapsed on the door of 178.
Okay. Just hold that there for one moment.
Yes.
Got a point pot here, John.
Yep.
I want you to pull a point in 30 seconds, and then tell me the rest of the story about the Krays.
Okay.
So is this one here?
Yep, that one there. Yep. Okay. So, yes, I collapsed, in fact. I fell right on the doorstep of 178 Valence Road. And it just so happened, and thank heavens it happened, Reggie Craig was in. He heard the commotion. He came outside, and he stood in the doorway of his house. And just by standing there, people knew his reputation, and thank heaven, all these boys that were beating me up badly disappeared. So really, thanks to Reggie Cray, he saved my life.
That's an incredible story.
Yeah.
And it's in the book.
It's in the book.
So if you want a good read, it's not just George.
That's right.
Who's George?
George was my character in A Touch of Frost.
Yeah.
But the producer suggested that name, not just George, simply because I've done many other things.
Yeah, okay. Listen, John, absolute pleasure to talk.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Tom.
Hope you enjoy your pint.
Another cracking show on Lee Anderson's Railroads. Had some brilliant guests. It's going to be more of the same next week. But look, stay tuned, because next we've got Mark Dolan, Friday Night Live. What's occurring, Mark?
Thanks, Lee. Should Sir Keir Starmer resign over the Gaza vote scandal? Can Speaker Hoyle survive the crisis? Does Shamima Begum deserve to be a British citizen? And do we need an inquiry into the COVID-19 vaccine? Was it safe and effective? Plus, is the menopause a disability? All these debating points and many more on Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. It's a busy hour to come. Get the kettle on. I'll see you in 2.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie, from the Met Office. It'll be a chilly start to the weekend. There will be some early sunshine though, but a risk of showers developing in the afternoon. Low pressure's been in charge through today. That will slowly start to fill, bringing us a slightly more settled evening and Saturday. So any showers through the day will tend to fade away through the course of the night, but they will still persist across some western coasts and across the far southeast as well, where it could be quite breezy overnight. Elsewhere, though, it will be a clear and calm and dry night, so temperatures will drop away, so it's likely to be quite a cold start to the day on Saturday. So frost, potentially some icy patches, and also some mist and fog by tomorrow morning. That should lift and clear by mid-morning, and many areas will see a dry and bright day through Saturday. The best of the sunshine will definitely be through the morning. Cloud will bubble up into lunchtime and into the afternoon, allowing a few showers to develop. These should be fairly few and far between, and they will be quite light if you do get caught in one. In the sunshine, it will be feeling fairly pleasant as well with those light winds. Will be another cold start to the day on Sunday, but across northern areas it should stay dry and bright through much of the day. In the south, though, quite a different story with some quite persistent wet weather set to arrive across southern areas of England, possibly into parts of South Wales too. Turns drier more widely once again on Monday before further wet weather arrives in the north on Tuesday. See you later.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has